Alright, so foggy but beautiful day here in Pacific Grove. I'm going to do a watercolor today, and I thought I would share my process with you guys. So here's the scene I'm working with. I really like the cypress trees over to the right and the cottages that are just visible beyond the dunes. I'm not seeing a really strong pattern in the dunes themselves, so I'm going to just use what I'm seeing as inspiration, but I'm going to be changing things to make for a better composition and to simplify things. Also, I may try to indicate a horizon line. Right now there's a lot of fog out here, but it is coming and going. All right, so first I'll share my setup with you. I will start with my folding palette here. This is an inexpensive plastic palette. I think I spent about $9 for it at Blick Art Materials. It comes empty of colors. You've got to fill the colors in yourself, which is kind of nice because then you get to choose what colors you want. I'm using a similar palette to my oil paints, ultramarine blue. There's like a phthalo type blue here. I've got a couple reds. This is like kind of an alizarin crimson, and then this is close to like a cadmium red light. Burnt sienna here. This is yellow ochre. I've got a couple yellows here, a cool and a warm yellow. I've got some gray colors here, Payne's gray, that I'll occasionally use for graying down colors. And then I've got a dioxazine purple here. And then this is white gouache that can be used to fix mistakes. But I do not use this white gouache very often. So that is my folding palette. It's kind of nice because it's very portable. And you can see compared to the size of my hand, it's pretty small, pretty light. I started out with a palette that was portable, but it didn't have a lot of areas to mix color. So I really do like this palette. And as I said too, I like the idea that I can fill it with colors of my own choosing. So I've got Winsor & Newton artist grade watercolors in here. As for the paper, I've been using Arches cold pressed paper, and I have large sheets of this, which I'm not exactly sure the size of a full sheet. This is an 1/8 sheet, which I think is roughly 7.5 by 11 inches. So I use this paper here. Somebody gave me a stack of this paper. And then, I don't know if you guys can see, but there's a piece of plexiglass here. And basically what I do is I tape the paper down onto this plexiglass here. Because when wetting the paper, if I'm doing a wash, often the paper will sort of curl up. So I guess there's a couple choices. You could either tape your paper down or wet both sides. I choose to tape the paper down. As for brushes, I've got a number 6 Princeton Neptune, which is fairly thick. This is kind of a mop brush that I use for the initial wash. And then I typically come in with this Princeton Heritage number 12 for more detail. And then I do have like a small liner brush that I don't use very often, but I carry it anyway. And I carry everything in a toothbrush container just to keep the brushes protected. As for water, I just carry a bottle of water, and then I've got this old pesto container from Trader Joe's that I use to hold the water. Other things I have, a little spray bottle from Sephora. I'll use that to kind of activate the paints, kind of give the paints a spritz of this. And then also paper towels, and there's extra pencils in here. I carry extra paper in this priority mail envelope, and then all of it goes into this bag right here. All right, first thing I'm going to do is tape down the paper. And I've just got masking tape here, just taping down the edge. I started doing watercolor when traveling with my daughter, just because it's so difficult to travel with oils. And at first I was kind of skeptical about, you know, painting watercolor. I wasn't that thrilled with the idea, but like I said, because of the portability, I was like, all right, I'll give it a try. And then I found that I absolutely loved it, and I find it really challenging because it's the opposite process kind of to oil painting. You know, oil painting, you're painting dark to light. With watercolor, you're painting light to dark. But I found that it was challenging, but also I think it helped me grow as a painter in general. Got to plan ahead a little bit more with watercolor. I think with oil painting, I would just jump in knowing that I could scrape it down or fix things. With watercolor, you know, you lay it down and that's it. So you've got to plan out your approach a bit more. And I think that, like I said, helped me with my oil painting as well. So I feel like watercolors helped me grow as an oil painter. Plus, it's just really enjoyable. So the first step is to sketch out my design. I'm using a pencil that I just got from a hotel. It's nothing fancy. And then I've got a kneadable eraser here in case I want to clean up a bit. But I'm just looking for big shapes. I've got a tree over on this side here. There's a couple cottages. And then I think I'll have a bush right here. And what else? There's some greenery on these sand dunes that I'll be adding. And so I've sketched out a few idea shapes here, but I'm just going to kind of wing it. For me, with watercolor is sort of a chance to play around. It's kind of low stakes because it's just paper. I don't feel like I'm really wasting materials. So it's kind of a fun way to play around with ideas. All right, so here is the sketch. Main focus will be these little houses. All right, so I got my little spray bottle here with water in it, and I'm just gonna spritz the colors just to activate them. All right, I've propped up my paper here on my canvas bag, and I'm using the mop to wet the paper. And honestly, I do have doubts about this painting. I always have doubts. Actually, I have doubts when I'm painting oil as well, but almost always with watercolor. I feel like I don't have the skill level to control you know, what the paint does, but I sort of like that. I like that it is out of control for me and unpredictable. I mean, oil painting is challenging as well, but it's just a whole different type of challenge. Like I said, that's one of the things I really like about watercolor. So I'm going to hold it up to make sure that the water is spread evenly. And as you can see, I'm kind of drying it a little bit. All right. Okay, since the paper is wet, you can see the color sort of spreads out nicely. Now it's going to be drying. This color will dry lighter. So I'm not worried about it being too dark. In fact, I'm trying to go a bit darker than I actually see. And as I mentioned, I'm painting light to dark. So the next step is to do a color for the sand dunes here. For the sand dunes, I'm starting with a mixture of yellow ochre and a bit of cadmium yellow lemon. And the sand dunes will be the lightest value in the painting. Maybe add a little bit more warmth there. It's kind of going towards green, which I'm not crazy about, but let's see, maybe a little bit more. Going with more of a pure yellow ochre down in the foreground. Again, this will dry lighter and I think a little bit less saturated than we're seeing right now. So this is basically almost like toning the paper, just the starting point. Putting in some blue-green tones for the water. Okay, so there is the initial wash, and I'm going to want to let this dry for a bit, because if I were to paint some additional shapes on top of this, it would just blend together. So one of the challenges of watercolor is getting used to how the paper behaves when it's wet. All right, so I think the paper is dry enough. We'll see. Oops, that was a mistake. So now I've got a smaller brush here. It's going to suggest the ocean. And I'm not worried about painting over these cottages because they're going to be darker. Now there's going to be a tree over here, but I want the ocean to be visible through the tree. All right, next step, there's going to be a bush here, something like that. And let's see, maybe have a bit of that here as well. And here, just some greenery on this dune. There's an area in here that's a little bit warmer in temperature. Now there's going to be a tree over this right here, but I want to paint this greenery that's on the dunes, and I'm leaving the lighter portion. Let's see, I want this to kind of go up like this. There's like some more greenery here, and sometimes I find it's helpful just to paint really quickly and not overthink. I think there's some greenery in here. This. Looks like my horizon right here is kind of, I'm going to cover that up because my horizon is messed up. There we go. Alright, next putting in the buildings. This is an opportunity to get some red into the painting. Alright, this is a mixture of dioxazine purple and burnt sienna. Alright, I feel like I want some more definition in here. But I don't want it to get too busy. Alright, I feel like I might have overworked this section here, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'll let it dry, and then I'm going to take the tape off. I don't want to do any more to it. I think there's some nice things going on, and I don't want to risk messing it up. Here's the big reveal. So here's what I finished up with. This painting took about an hour to complete. I'd say about 15 minutes of that hour was just waiting for the initial wash to dry. So the process again was to do the initial wash and then come in with slightly darker colors and then wait for those to dry and then come on top of that with even darker colors to add some additional definition. As I mentioned, I like to stop early. I don't want to overwork the painting. And just like with my oils, I want there to be a feeling of spontaneity and simplicity. Initially, I thought this might be a problem here, all this sand in the foreground. This is something I wouldn't do with an oil painting, is have, you know, all this light value in the foreground like this. But with watercolor, I think it works. Just having a few sketchy strokes in here, not a lot of definition. And then the darker colors right here of these cottages, I think draws the eye over the foreground to these cottages. So I think it works, but like I said, that's something I would not do with oils. Although maybe it's something I should experiment with. So as I mentioned, sometimes watercolor gives me ideas that I can explore in oils. Things I wouldn't do in oil, but they work in watercolor, and then I give them a go, and often they work out. Alright, so hope you guys enjoyed taking a look at my watercolor process. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to see some extra videos and help support the channel, there's a Patreon link down below. It's the Patreon support that helps keep me making these videos, and it's much appreciated, so check it out. Other than that, stay creative. I'll see you guys in the next video.